Hey, what's up, all you amphibians out there? I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, and I'm coming at you with a quick review of Amphibia Season 2, Episode 5 and 6. You'll know if that's a lie if you look just in the time bar below, so hopefully this is a quick one, as there's only so much to really talk about these episodes. With Episode 5, uh, Truck Stop Polly opening up with everyone in a dark forest. Polly takes a look at where we are currently on the map, and we're almost at the halfway point to get into Newtopia. But Polly's feeling a little homesick, looking for the comforts of home. But Hoppadiah is a little too tired to read to her, and Sprig and Anne are trying to navigate a treacherous path. But when Polly comes bursting in asking for a story to be read to her, the cart goes out of control, and Hoppediah regrets letting the kids take control of steering the wagon, which isn't really fair to them. But Polly continues on with her want for the simple comforts of home, and bath time turns into mush time as she ends up destroying most of their food rations, and even ends up zapping the family when she rubs on the carpet. Ew. It was a fun little moment, but it's unfortunate that, she ends up being berated by her family. So they take a pit stop at the truck stop to get some fuel and coffee, but Polly ends up overhearing them talking when she goes off to get some paper towels to clean things up. That they're kind of fed up with Polly's antics, with Hoppadiah even having suggested that they leave her back home with you know, the elderly lady they have back in their village. I swear she's mentioned in this episode, but I completely end up forgetting her name. But Habadiah doesn't actually mean that, as he's just tired and grumpy. But Polly ends up taking it to heart, and spots a rock that looks very similar to her. So she disguises it as herself in order to trick the family. Unfortunately, they don't end up actually looking at Polly, or the Brock Polly, and end up driving off without her, much to her dismay. And she starts to vent to the truckers in the truck stop, one of which is Soggy Joe. I love Soggy Joe. He's a fun one. But one trucker comes bursting in, stating that purple stone was no stone. It was, in fact, an egg for a very dangerous bird. So Polly enlists the help of Soggy Joe to help out her family. So when Anne realizes, after she tries to read Polly her story, that this is no Polly, she freaks out and alerts Hoppadiah and Sprig, only for the egg to start to hatch. So when Polly and Soggy Joe, now Speedy Joe, end up catching up to the planters, the egg ends up hatching and going on a rampage. So Polly ends up using Soggy Joe's or Speedy Joe's wool seats in order to charge herself up, and has him launch her at the chicken, frying that bird something fierce and scaring it away. And while she's happy to be reunited with her family, Habadiah does berate her for, causing them so much worry. But ultimately, they understand where she was coming from in terms of this, and are just happy that she's safe and want her to know that they'd never leave her behind. With Speedy Joe offering them a ride to the next stop. And so, since they'll actually not have to, force themselves to get through, make their way through the dark, they're able to actually read Polly the storybook, which is actually very violent, but that's very much Polly's speed. Ending the fifth episode. We then pick up with the sixth episode, a caravan named Desire, as the planter family is making their way through the dry swamp, which is just like, it's just a desert, dude. It's straight up just a desert. You've been through a desert before. With Hoppadiah reiterating his want to be an actor. We saw a little bit of that in season 1, but it takes center stage here, as they end up encountering a sandworm, only to get assistance from this one frog, who alerts them that in strength in numbers, basically. The sandworms don't really mess with people who have numbers on their side. It spooks them. And it's revealed that this is Renee Rogers, who commands a acting troupe. And they're traveling from town to town across the dry swamp. And Renee ends up introducing them to all of her stagehands, with the kids going along with one kid named Francois, who's part of the young kids of the acting troupe. And whereas Sprig and Polly are all about it, and not so much, as a past experience in her childhood during a play she had in elementary school scarred her for life, basically. So she ends up spending the entire episode trying to finish a puzzle. Meanwhile, Renee lets Hopadiah that she's looking for a leading man in her play, and despite Hopadiah's best efforts, she does not feel him in terms of an actor. Meanwhile, Sprig ends up being demeaned by the acting kids as they don't find that he's a very good actor himself, especially when it comes to method acting, basically really getting into the role and carrying it with you wherever you go. But this does not deter Sprig, as he wants desperately to be accepted by the theater kids. Meanwhile, Hopadiah gives this impassioned speech about at least trying to follow his dreams instead of just never actually putting forth the effort. But his passion in this speech actually, makes Renee reconsider and casts him as her leading man. And Hopadiah actually does a fantastic job as an actor. He's actually apparently very good. Meanwhile, Sprig continues to try his best to fit in with the acting kids, but to no avail. And unfortunately, while they do still end up being chased by sandworms, Anne's puzzle manages to get ruined at every turn. So everyone but Hopadiah and Polly are having a bad time. But when Hopadiah goes to run some lines past Renee, he comes to find out that they're actually using Hopadiah's performance, which are still good and captivating, in order to rob the bank in every town they visit, with Renee using Hopadiah's dream of being an actor in order to persuade him to continue to allow their illicit activities. And when Hopadiah goes to talk to Anne about the situation, who tells him he should own up to it, ultimately Hopadiah decides to continue acting. Sprig then bursts in, destroying Anne's puzzle even more, in order to ask her what to do about the troupe kids, the theater kids, but Sprig doesn't take her advice to ignore them and ultimately decides to double down on his efforts. And with the last bit being Polly coming in to tell Anne she loves her. It's very sweet and very funny. So as the performance begins, Hopadiah acts his butt off. Sprig ultimately decides that he doesn't care what the theater kids feel, only for his passion, once again just like his grandpa, ends up getting him in with the theater kids. Meanwhile, Renee proceeds to rob the bank. Hopadiah gives an impassioned speech on stage about, doing the right thing, which ultimately, he regains his heart during the course of this, really taken into the speech that he's giving, wanting to practice what he's preaching, and he ends up outing Renee and her illicit activities. But Renee tries her best to escape, with Hopadiah trying to stop her. She detaches her front car, only to end up being at the mercy of a sandworm, destroying her car, and ultimately getting her arrested. And the sheriff ends up questioning Hopadiah if he knew anything about these activities. And while he denies it at first, Anne and Sprig and Polly end up kinda outing him, only for him to gather the rest of them up and try to escape, with Anne still having no appreciation for the arts. Oof. Oh man. Yep, not the worst episode, not the best. Nice little filler material. Had nice little moments, nice little character moments. Polly had some time to shine. Hopadiah had some time to shine. All in all, decent episodes, but nothing really plot relevant. But tell me your thoughts on these episodes in the comments section below. Did you feel that they were pretty good, or do you feel that they were ultimately padding in the end? Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye bye.